Thanks for having me here today. I hope I don't disappoint those who are particularly interested in this topic because it's, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I remember back to the last, was it Mark Beatty was the last month,
yeah,
wasn't he?
that's right.
And he started out with, this is what, this is the takeaway from today. And I thought, well, what's my takeaway for this talk? And I don't have any fantastic tools or models or anything like that to take away. What I want you guys to take away today from this talk is you need to be thinking. You need to be thinking for yourself, a bit of critical thinking, which you all should have learned in your MBAs or whatever degrees you took. Critical thinking about what you get from the media, what you get from the mass market, and think about, does that make sense? Does that fit? And how does it work within what you do in your organization and at your level within your organization? I've called it dynamic leadership. For those who remember the last time we were here, I was here, 3 years ago, I think, was when I did the talk. So probably nobody remembers. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of a recap, a very short recap of the dynamic organizations, starting with dynamic. What do we mean by dynamic? Because most people, when they think of dynamic, think of kind of energetic and boisterous and loud, kind of like I am. But actually, a few definitions of dynamic from various dictionaries. It is about change. It's about changing, adapting, action. It's not just loud, obnoxious, like myself. And then we talk about dynamic organizations, and this was virtually the entire talk last time I was here, 3 years ago. And in dynamic organizations, there are 4 key principles. The first one, and apologies for the slide, it's kind of offset because of the projector, I think, is I call it C. It's about building your systems and processes to make problems obvious. So there's lots of different systems and processes within organizations. Some are very good at identifying problems. Most organizations tend to be very good at hiding problems. Nobody in particular leadership roles wants to know about problems. Good dynamic organizations, as I call them, build their systems and processes to make problems obvious as early as possible. Once we make those problems obvious, we need to be able to solve those problems. So we need to have good tools, techniques, mechanisms in place for solving problems. When we solve the problem, we should be gaining some new knowledge, one about the process where the problem came from, but also gaining knowledge about how we solve problems. So the idea within these 3 is that we are, as it sounds, identifying problems, solving problems, and learning from that. And the 4th principle or element is, I call it show, to make it a nice, simple 4 S's. But it is about leadership, developing their people to do the first 3 things. So coaching and developing people to improve systems and processes to make problems obvious, and then helping them to solve problems. And of course, how do we share the knowledge that we gain across the organization so that we don't have one problem happening in one area of the business and the same problem happening a week or a month or a year later in another area. If we'd have shared the knowledge we gained from the first time we solved it, we wouldn't have the same problems cropping up over and over again. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's the recap. And I did talk, Ian kind of covered the next 10 minutes of my talk. Leadership versus management. About 10 years ago, and maybe it was a bit longer than that, but if you look at the media, about 10 years ago, Lee Iacocca, I don't know if anyone has heard of him, was a big exec in the States, wrote a book, Where Have All the Leaders Gone? And of course, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, some other articles, Where Are All the Leaders? And there's been a big, I think maybe social media has been quite powerful in this, in saying we don't have enough good leadership, we need more leadership, and management's not such a good thing. In fact, Harvard Business Review, How Do Managers Become Leaders? We don't want managers anymore, at least that's what you would believe if you looked at all the social media and what the various different articles are saying in the magazines. Nobody wants to be these guys. Everybody wants to be like those guys, right? Am I wrong? Of course not. And if you go, I assume everyone here is on LinkedIn. If you go on LinkedIn or if you go on Facebook, you have seen probably most of these, although this is a very small snapshot of all the differences between managers and leaders. And if you look down the right side where the leaders are, it's all these great, wonderful, happy things, and on the left, it's all these terrible things about control and systems, where on the right we're inspiring people and we're focusing on people, and we're just focusing on results. So what I wanted to do was kind of summarize these differences into some simple principles or premises that we can use for the rest of this talk. So I looked at it and I thought management is processes, systems, and control. We're focusing on processes, systems, and control. And in leadership, they're talking about inspiration, people, and results. Fair? So when we talk about management, and there's a definition there at the top, it's this processes, systems, and control. And maybe the thinking behind that is everyone knows McGregor and his theory X, theory Y. Theory X, everyone's lazy and they need to be controlled. They need to be, no carrot, just lots of stick to motivate people to get them to do things. And with that type of thinking, you get organizations, I think, like McDonald's, lots of, systems, lots of processes, lots of control. And who wants to work there? Nobody, right? At least I don't. I'm sure some people do. The owners do. They like working there. So that's the management side of it, and it's, it's not very glamorous. Nobody likes it. We don't want these systems. We don't want control. We just want to inspire people. And we just want to have this inspiration, tell people what we want to achieve, and just let them go. Let them go and deliver for us. And that sits very well with McGregor's theory Y, right? Where people are generally creative and they're motivated and they want to do well for the organization. They just want the freedom to do it. They want the inspiration. So all we care about is the results. Yeah, don't really care how you do it. Just give us the results. We want to inspire you. And I think from that you get organizations such as Enron, Volkswagen, and obviously I'm making a bit of light of this, but I think there's a danger with this current focus on inspiration and leadership. Yes, it fits for some people. Yes, it fits for some organizations. But a lot of organizations that I go into, they're lacking, seriously lacking, good, strong management, good, strong systems, even setting your strategy. You talk about leadership inspiring and whatnot. Inspiring to what? Just sell more next month. That's not really a good message. So how are we going to do that? What's our mechanism? What are our systems for, are we selling more? What are we doing? Is it working? Is it not working? Okay? So, you need both. A bit of leadership, a bit of management. And I'm not the first to say this. This is from 1960s. Everyone seen this before, right? Hersey's situational leadership. And basically, what I look at it, and I think over in this area, this is that management, right? This is I'm telling you how to do it, I'm telling you what to do. It's not about inspiration, it's not about results, it's very specific, directing someone what to do, how to do it. And on the other side, it's almost, here's the results I want, off you go, and do it however you like, yeah? So this is not a new concept, I didn't make this up. It has been around for, 50-some years. And actually, this is one of the most, the longest lasting concepts or theories about leadership, correct? Everyone's familiar with it? So really, we need a bit of both. We need some management, we need some leadership, and for the sake of this, I'm calling it dynamic leadership. I'm not looking to coin a phrase, I'm not looking to make a new model that'll become the next situational leadership. It just fits with my dynamic organizations concept, right? So all of this leadership, all of this management is really, if you look at the definitions, about getting to the goal, achieving the goals. And it's about how do we motivate people. We can either direct and control, or we can influence through inspiration and setting objectives, right? It's all about how do we motivate people, at least in my view. So I look at one of my favorite guys, Mr. Dan Pink. Everyone seen Dan Pink, know who he is? Talks about how do we motivate people, not the way we do it in business now. We need autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Yes? Everyone with me? Only I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to start with purpose, and then mastery and autonomy. And why am I going to start with purpose? Anyone know? Any ideas?
Because that's what organisations are, purposeful entities.
It's the outcome.
They should be.
Yeah, it's
They
the
should be.
outcome.
I start with purpose because,
It's the goals.
sorry?
It's the outcome organisation.
Yeah, it's the goal. What are we trying to achieve?
Hypnotized by Simon Sinek.
Well, we start with purpose also because Simon Sinek says you start with the why. And we do need to start with the why. I think not just in the purpose of the organization, which is here. We talk about purpose, leadership, inspiring. Why do we do what we do? What are we trying to accomplish? But on the flip side, what is the purpose of the systems and processes that we use to get there? And I think it's quite important that organizations are very clear about their systems and processes, not just that we've got a bunch and we're really rigid and bureaucratic, but that we've got a reason why we do things, not just to achieve the goal, but why we do them the way that we do them. Yeah? And of course, I'm suggesting that the See, Solve, Share, Show is the model that is the most effective. I'm not the only one who says that, by the way, in terms of achieving goals, because it is about creating an organization that learns and improves, rather than one that gets up every day, goes to work and says, sell more this month, okay? So we start with the purpose. We've got the organizational purpose. Everyone gets that on the leadership side, but I think it's also quite important as to why do we do things the way that we do them. And that is still sitting much more on the leadership side, although in those systems and processes, it is about management, it is about control, it is about making sure that we are all working not just to the same goal, but working in the same way so that we can learn as we go. Talk about mastery, again, it's pretty obvious that we want to get better at what we do. Mastery of your day job, the technical mastery of whatever it is. If you're a salesman, becoming a very good salesman. If you're a production engineer, a very good production engineer, etc., etc. On the management side, in terms of system mastery, it's getting better at creating systems and processes that make problems obvious. It's getting better at solving problems. It's finding new ways to share the knowledge we gain. And when you get to a certain level of mastery in your system, you start doing the show. You're now developing, coaching, and showing other people how to build the systems, improve the systems that you've got within your organization. And a lot of that is what people think is this management that is the bad word, that nobody wants to be. We don't want to tell people how to do it. We just want to give them, here's the objective, here's the result, off you go. But actually, you need to have good, solid systems and processes to be an effective organization that is going to grow and improve, because you're learning every time something happens. You're learning, you're sharing that knowledge. Finally, autonomy. And this is the one where I think there's the big difference between management and leadership, if we want to stick with the split. In the management side, we're highly prescriptive. We're telling people exactly what they need to do, exactly how they do it. That's like a McDonald's. McDonald's, there is no improve the system. McDonald's takes something like 6 months, I think, to introduce one new product on the menu. It's shocking how long it takes for them. And A and I were just talking about publishing, how long it takes to do things. But they're very prescriptive in the systems and processes of everyone who works there. On the flip side, you've got this idea of leadership and inspiring people, setting them the objective and pretty much giving them whatever they want to do, however they want to get there to achieve the objective. And there's an interesting case study, I think you could call it that. Zappos is a company in America. Has anyone heard of holacracy? So holacracy is some kind of concept that someone over in America came up with, where they don't have titles, they don't have positions, they don't have bosses. It is as autonomous as you can get, and the idea is, well, we know what our objective is as an organization, and therefore everyone just go and make it happen. And I'm getting funny looks, and this is exactly what happened. Self-governing produced a bit of a mess with people telling people they didn't know how things were getting done. And so the point that I'm trying to get through all of this is that yes, we need leadership to inspire people, but we need good systems, we need good processes, and we need good management, solid management to manage those processes, to make sure that they are followed, to make sure that they are improved wherever possible. All right? So somewhere between the two, and the reason I use dynamic, you like that, right? The reason I use dynamic is because it depends. It depends. Every organization is different. Every organization has a different culture, a different structure, a different market. They work in a different industry, etc., etc. And I think it's hopefully pretty clear that you can't have all leadership. Nobody wants a McDonald's side where everything is absolutely mandated from central office over, I think it's Atlanta, Georgia. But you need to find that balance. So we can't just say, here's the objective, off you go. And we can't say, here's the objective, and this is exactly what I want you to do step by step by step to get there. There needs to be a balance between, this is how we do it, and this is why we do it. Go on.
Before you move off this lovely slide, doesn't that arrow move a little bit depending on where you are in the organisation, how low down you are, how high up you are? So on the right hand side you've got your customer contact people who have to follow rules, and on the left hand side you can get more autonomy as you move up the chain. So does it not vary?
It does, but it's not an absolute. One of the interesting things, and you remind me back of my MBA, when I think I was working with Tanya. We went down to Starbucks, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I had to order a half coffee, half tea to see how prescriptive the organization was. Were they empowered to think and make decisions for themselves, or were they a little bit more autonomous to be able to satisfy what the customer wanted? And it's interesting that you bring that, because to me, if you went to McDonald's and tried to order a half Pepsi and a half milkshake, I don't think they would be able to handle it, because they are very, very prescriptive, whereas Starbucks is, somewhere over here. And you're right, it does depend on what level you're in. It definitely does. However, I would argue, and that's why I'm here, is arguing this, that even at the upper levels, you need a certain amount of prescriptive of how we do things. And I think too much over the last, 5, 10, 15 years, we have moved further and further towards this autonomy, which is okay to an extent. It's a good thing, but there needs to be some level of control within an organization, and that comes from management as opposed to leadership, if we're going to separate the two. My personal opinion is they need to be, the same person needs to be doing both. You need to have a certain ability to let people go, but you also need to have that ability to show people how to do things. And too often, and not just show people how to do things, but also correct them, not just when they don't get the result, but more importantly, when they're not following or not using the systems and processes that you have within your organization. Okay, if you've got something that you know it works, and it's working well, it's worked well for decades or what have you, use it. That doesn't mean don't experiment. Definitely experiment, see if you can improve upon it, but it should not be, here's the objective we want, off you go, figure it out for yourself. Because actually there's a lot of inefficiency in that as well.
People like Nick Leeson and Paul Flowers at the Co-op were highly autonomous, very high up in the organisation, and could have done with a bit more prescription and control.
And that's exactly the point that I'm trying to get at, is that, and I don't know those two individuals, I apologize for that, but you look at the likes of Enron, similar concept,
Scandal relief.
where you've basically said, here's the objective, and by any means possible, legal, moral, or otherwise, achieve the objective. And you can't have that. Not, from a risk perspective, but also from an effectiveness and efficiency perspective. How does the organization learn if everybody's doing their own thing? If anyone remembers back to, sorry?
Nick Leeson was Barings Bank. He brought down the bank basically. So he was trading highly successfully, as everyone thought, but basically he was getting the system. I think there were rules in place, but he just had to circumvent.
I think the interesting thing with
and no one
Leeson
really asked too many
is around
questions.
also the culture of the organisation that was highly rewarded.
Yeah.
And basically, I think he started off with one trade that went wrong, lost £100,000 or whatever, which in what they were doing isn't a problem. But he was too scared to admit it
Yeah.
or to tell anyone, so therefore he thought he'd do a double or quits to make it back. And once you start at that level, it doesn't take very
Yeah.
long until you take the
He
whole
managed
bank
to
down.
bury it in a police account and everything as well.
And the interesting thing about that, the first thing that comes to my mind, and I don't want to flip back through the slides, but where's the system and process that makes problems obvious? How long do these problems, how long are they allowed to go on? And I would argue, as of course I would, that's because we are too autonomous, and we aren't thinking that actually we need to maintain some level of control within our systems and processes.
Where does culture fit into this, though?
Well, to me, that's the beauty of the dynamic organization, is the culture then becomes, in the good ones, the culture becomes one where everyone's focused on not just, what our objective is, but on the way we achieve the objective and how do we improve those systems and processes. So it's, if you look at McDonald's, people just kind of come in and they go, I just got to do what I'm told, so therefore I disengage, switch off, and there's no creative juices going, what can I do to make it, to help the company? On the flip side, it's what can I do to help the company that'll help me to get my bonus, et cetera, et cetera. So you end up with a lot of individuals. You don't tend to have a good corporate culture. You have a good competitive culture. You can have a lot of people trying to not necessarily one up each other, but I'm going to get mine, and it doesn't matter if I have to step on you or you to get there. So you get kind of a corrosive culture. And if you can get the balance right between the two, because believe it or not, there are a lot of people in this world that actually don't want this level of autonomy. They need a certain amount of control, and they're very frustrated that their leadership isn't telling the other guy that he's not following the process. They don't want to do it themselves. So that you get a culture where everyone's just kind of upset, pissed off because the management won't actually manage the people. They're desperate for managers to actually tell people, that's not how we do it here. The standard is we do it like this. And so when you don't get that balance right, you either have people completely switched off and they just do as they're told. And I think on the other side, you also get people completely switched off and they just do what they have to get through the day, to get through the week, to get their paycheck at the end of the month. Or you get the other side where everyone's stepping on everyone to get their bonus or what have you. Yes? So I like quotes. I like looking. By the way, none of this is original thought by me. It's all copied. So Tony, with your intellectual property, I apologize. We've had this manager leader for I don't know, at least a decade, if not more, a couple decades now. And if you remember back to the beginning, I said dynamic. It's about change. Would anyone disagree that the world is constantly changing? The business world is constantly changing. So I think the problem with this is it assumes that everything stays the same, so managers are happy to accept the status quo. I would say, what if the status quo is constant change? How do we have an organization that is capable of adapting to the changes in the market? It's about having that dynamic organization where we can adapt fast, set the pace, rather than follow, try and catch up, hopefully make some more money this month, but we don't know how we're going to get there. And therefore we need leaders who can do both leading, inspiring, and controlling, managing, adapting as required. The more purpose we have in both organization and system, the higher the level of mastery in the technical and the system means we can have more autonomy. But autonomy is based on the ability to have a clear, or it's based on having a clear purpose. It's based on having a good, solid system for people to work within. Any questions? Simple? That's it, to be honest with you. I just wanted to kind of prompt some thinking to say there is no absolute, we need all leadership, we need all, or no management. There needs to be a balance. And I can't give you a prescription for what that balance is, because every organization is different. It is different at what level you are within the organization. And it's each leader's job to think about that, not on a regular basis like every day, but they need to be thinking about, do the people that work in my team have understanding of our purpose? Do we have good mastery of our systems? And that will help determine how much autonomy we can give them to improve the system, to go out and make the extra sales this month, et cetera, et cetera.